My anxiety doesn't come from thinking about the future, but from wanting to control it. Hugh Prather. This video is sponsored by Jordan Peterson's book, 12 Rules for Life. When I was growing up, I was a pretty social kid in the suburbs of Long Island, New York. Whether it was going on adventures with friends, riding bikes around the neighborhood and through the woods, going to birthday parties, or having sleepovers where we'd play Nintendo 64 or Xbox until late at night, sneaking out when we were supposed to be sleeping, we'd always come up with some creative plan to keep ourselves entertained and occupied, and we were always trying new things and going to new places. The thing is, I can remember very specific times when I was particularly anxious. The first time I played Truth or Dare with a group of girls and kissed a hot one in my basement, the first real fight in elementary school and getting my ass kicked by a kid 2 years younger than me, learning about my first girlfriend potentially cheating on me. Essentially any time I experienced something new, as long as it came with some degree of social, physical, or emotional risk. My curiosity for adventure and social acceptance only expanded as a teenager. Skateboarding, hockey games, house parties, getting my license, getting my car, staying out crazy hours, all night, pushing the boundaries of what I could get away with. My life became characterized by an increasing threshold for risk and danger. Rules that I was always taught to follow became less and less important to me. In fact, I found the most genuine fun breaking them blatantly. Even when I was super nervous, there was something exciting about stepping into the chaos of the unknown that made me feel the most alive. After repeatedly getting away with troublesome activities, time and time again, I began to realize that this fear was really all just something that was happening between my own two ears. It was an uncomfortable, automatic response to a potentially painful or dangerous outcome. Dancing on the line between order and chaos, enjoying the buzz of the spicy cocktail of adrenaline and cortisol that would often linger on long after the threat or consequence had vanished. But one thing I noticed was whenever I chose not to push the boundaries, chose not to skip school, chose to pull back and play it safe, chose to run away from the kids that were bullying me, or back down from asking out the cute girl, my mind would torture me for days or weeks or even months afterward. These colorful, exaggerated fantasies about the thing that I was avoiding, like dragons, teasing my curiosity and forcing me to wonder what could happen or what would happen if I actually stepped up. Would I get hurt? Made fun of? Die? What was the worst that could happen? Every time I gave in to the fear and backed down from the challenge, these dragons would become magnified in my mind and they would haunt me. I'd try to pretend they didn't exist, but this only gave them more power over my thoughts and actions. One thing that helped me mitigate my worries when taking risks was alcohol. Once I had a few drinks in me, I became Superman, afraid of nothing. But this very quickly became a crutch that turned into a nasty habit. In hindsight, it was really the uncertainty of my own ability to overcome whatever came my way, because I had not yet overcome much as a teenager, at least not in my own eyes. Not understanding or recognizing that I had the answer to these fears inside of me the whole time, but without the opportunity and willingness to prove it to myself, to express it, my capacity to slay these dragons might as well have not existed at all. Self-imposed limitations based on an automatic stop button built into my lizard brain. So despite my willingness to slay larger and larger dragons, there were still plenty that terrified me and caused me to retreat. And whenever I did retreat, I would mentally torment myself. The social pressures only made it worse. Oftentimes, after enough self-abuse for not stepping up, I'd take action and I'd confront the dragon, if only to quiet the nagging voices in my own head. The action was always the remedy. The bird stands on the branch not because of its faith in the branch, but because of its faith in its own wings. Author unknown. I eventually became familiar with the larger cycle and the practical utility my fear was serving for me. I began to understand that my anxiety was simply preparing me for action, channeling all of my body's resources and energy toward this perceived threat so that I had the greatest possible chance of succeeding in my encounter with this danger and uncertainty. A primitive, necessary response to increase my pain tolerance and narrow my focus, temporarily shifting me into a higher gear. Rather than dancing around what was frightening me, running away, or trying to ignore it, the one guaranteed way to burn away this vague, smoky sense of uncertainty every time was to just run directly fucking at it. I'd have to voluntarily confront it and show it and myself what I was really made of, even if I was terrified. Through repeating this process, I began to understand what courage is. I began to understand what confidence is and how it's born. It was never about removing the fear or trying to pretend it wasn't there. It was about saying, oh, this is what we're doing? All right, bring it on, bitch. Even when I was terrified, especially when I was terrified, I just had to be willing to throw myself into the fire, then let the chips fall, trusting that I would figure it out in the process and be better for it. In other words, building the plane after I had already jumped off the cliff. As long as I was willing to get scratched, bruised, burned, criticized, to experience some potential pain or punishment, the anxiety would vanish, because that's all it was protecting me from in the first place. I just had to look the dragon dead in the eye and say, fuck you, we're doing this. The action was always the remedy. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Marcus Aurelius, ancient Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher. Many say aggression is born out of fear. Well, I definitely became aggressive in my later teenage years, mostly as an adaptive response to overcome adverse and scary situations, sometimes just to push back against social pressures. The truth is, aggression can be an extremely potent and viable tool for plowing forward in the face of fear. It's like getting a battery plugged into your back and running at a brick wall at full speed, smashing it into pieces and enjoying the process. It just overrides the anxieties and the worries and gets us into action mode. Instead of feeling threatened, we become the threat. We become the force to be reckoned with. We become the danger. If you've ever watched Breaking Bad, what a show. In Season 4, Episode 6, Cornered, there's a beautifully executed cinematic example of this with the protagonist Walter White. Walter, he's a middle-aged, timid, passive-aggressive chemistry teacher turned vicious drug pin across all seasons in the face of this terminal lung cancer diagnosis that he's faced with. This person, this character, portrays a prime example of this when his wife, Skylar, voices her subtly demeaning concern about his business dealings.
Walt, please, let's both of us stop trying to justify this whole thing and admit you're in danger.
Who are you talking to right now? Let me clue you in. I am not in danger, Skylar. I am the danger. A guy opens his door and gets shot, and you think that of me? No. I am the one who knocks.
The reason this scene is so powerful is because every man can relate to this exact moment. Rage, wiping away all fear and anxiety. The intoxicating feeling of knowing your capacity to compel the world around you in any way you see fit. The annihilation of fear in the face of true inner power and capacity for destruction within yourself. Invincibility. The welcoming of danger and threat with open arms. With every new level of power Walt accumulates in the underground, he becomes more certain in his capacity for destruction. He becomes respected, feared by the most treacherous villains. But more importantly, he develops an unshakable respect for himself, for he now has hard evidence of what he is really capable of. We've all sought to feel this sense of power at some point. Most of us when we've felt powerless to the world around us for too long, until something or someone corners us and forces it to erupt from the depths of our essence. We are, after all, part of the chaos and nature of existence. Why should we think we're so precious and weak and different from the world around us? The thing is, as unstable and powerful as this aggressive force is, the problem is really not with the aggression itself. It's with the oppression of that aggression. It's the dismissing of it, the shameful compartmentalizing of it, not allowing it a proper outlet to manifest itself in a healthy, empowering, and productive way. That is the problem. It's the shaming of this powerful and natural life force that ultimately leads to a massive overcorrection when we least expect it or want it to. It's like a bottle of soda that we repeatedly shake without ever twisting off the cap. All of that pressure must eventually go somewhere. It's just a matter of time. And when the cap finally blows off, we feel a taste of that power, watching how it wipes away everything in our path. We become a force, and with all that built-up pressure, it's easy to hold on to this power for too long and become drunk on it. It can consume us, even as we watch it corrode our mind, body, relationships, and the world around us, controlling us instead of us controlling it. We lash out at a loved one, throw something across the room, break things, destroy relationships, and engage in self-destructive behavior. The guilt and shame this generates further fuels a toxic cycle of self-hatred, often leading to substance abuse and physical outbursts to numb the emotional pain. Before we know it, we've become a freight truck belting down the freeway at 120 miles an hour with no brakes. The momentum has become too strong. We've become an unstoppable force, or at least we feel like one, and the only thing that can halt our damaged ego, flailing all of that raw energy, is an immovable force. At the extremes, this often means prison or death. So how do we control this aggression? How do we recognize its utility for overcoming our fears and anxieties, for taking proper action forward and accomplishing our goals without it completely enveloping us in a way that ends up causing more damage than it's worth? We start by acknowledging it when it comes to the surface. We become aware of it. We stop dismissing it and pretending that it isn't there. Many of us had parents that constantly told us to be a good little boy or girl, not to speak up around other family members, friends, strangers, causing us to deny our own instincts and feelings from a young age, disconnecting from our intuition, and relying on constant outside validation or guidance, even as adults. Useful, necessary limitations for civilizing us into society as children, not so useful for properly understanding and managing our frustrations and needs as adults. So, we grow up, and many of us wonder why we feel guilty and ashamed all the time when we feel something we were taught is bad. You shouldn't feel that way. Just be respectful. Just be nice. Don't cause any trouble. We wonder why we have a society of anxious, passive-aggressive, resentful men and women using manipulative, indirect tactics to get their needs met instead of voicing their frustrations directly. A whole generation of people afraid to take action, afraid to fail, afraid to fall down, afraid of punishment and humiliation, afraid of rejection. The main point I'd really like to highlight here is that the ability to control and steer our aggression is absolutely necessary. Suppressing it is problematic. But we want people to like us. We want to avoid pain. And so we conveniently avoid conflict and confrontation in the short term when the dragon can be easily slayed through a quick conversation. It's easy to dismiss a small issue and toss it to the side, telling ourselves it'll resolve itself. And sometimes it does, but more commonly it doesn't. It grows in the dark and grows and grows, becoming a larger and larger dragon that's increasingly difficult to slay. So do yourself a favor and stop saying yes when you want to say no. Speak your truth, honestly and directly, whatever it is, with yourself first and then with others. Challenge the ideas you disagree with. Let other people challenge your ideas. Invite activities into your daily life that are challenging in the moment, even when you feel scared or embarrassed, even when it leads to difficult conversations. Because if your life is a mess, it's probably the accumulation of a bunch of tiny dragons, a bunch of very small moments that you ignored something you knew you should have taken care of. Because that's all the big dragons really are composed of. So break them down. See them for what they are. Chip away at the easy things first, slowly, as puny and trivial as they might seem, because these actions compound quickly, and they sharpen your sword in the process. Chances are your life, as much as you love it or hate it, didn't get to the way it is by one major decision that you made, but rather many tiny, seemingly insignificant, consecutive choices repeated over time. Smoking one cigarette isn't an issue for most people, but smoking one every hour for 10 years? Bit of a different conversation. That divorce you and your wife are discussing probably got to this point from a whole bunch of neglected small conversations that you could have addressed and should have addressed when you saw yourselves drifting apart day by day, week by week. Or your fat body. It's probably not the consequence of one cheeseburger you ate, but rather maybe you have been eating fast food twice a day for the last 3 or 4 years and not working out, not spending that 15 or 20 or 30 minutes a day. If you take away anything from this video, let it be this. Your dragons can be slayed, and life can get really, really good. That weight that gnaws at your conscience every day like a rat in the walls of your mind, telling you what you need to do but aren't. That conversation you keep avoiding. As you start taking proper action, the light at the end of the tunnel begins to reveal itself automatically through small steps forward, and we begin to see a way out of the darkness. We begin to develop clarity. By just putting one foot in front of the other, we don't have to see the full path. Not everything reveals itself right away, but it all starts with a single small step. The slaying of one small dragon and just a little bit of faith. So the key then is to set the bar where you are, not where you want to be. This is not a time to be ambitious. This requires some radical humility, because that small step might be so small it's embarrassing. But if that's what it means to get you started, if that's what it takes, you take that fucking step. And once you have the next step will reveal itself. These tiny steps become habits, and your habits are a far greater determinant of how your life will turn out in the next 5, 10, 20 years than some massive single thing that you think you need to do today. Don't underestimate the power of small, moment-to-moment decisions across time. Instead of being weighed down by some vague, foggy cloud of indecision, you will alchemize it into clarity, certainty, and optimism. You will realize you're not so stupid or useless or toxic or lazy or weak after all, but you're rather stronger, smarter, and more capable than you ever thought. And you will have the evidence from your own steps to prove it, more importantly. So the next time you're staring nakedly at one of your dragons, whether it's a toxic relationship, a health problem, a messy room, a job you hate, a conversation you need to have, whatever it might be, understand the discomfort you feel is there to serve you. Your anxiety is just a signal from your subconscious mind, and if you slow down enough to listen to it, you will see it is only there to help you. The way it will help you is by revealing a dragon hiding in the dark. And as you begin to build the habit of slaying these small dragons on a regular basis, you will be far less likely to encounter massive ones that completely wipe you out. And even if you do, you'll be ready for it. So just fucking get started. If this video gave you any value, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, drop a comment below, let me know what resonated with you, hit the notification bell so you don't miss future videos, and I'll leave a link in the description below to Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Life. Go grab yourself a copy and have a great day.